Hello and welcome back to the channel. I'm playing a quick game on my Nintendo Switch and it reminded me of a phrase that my parents used to say to me. And it's probably one you've heard as well. Kids today, they don't know they're born. And maybe now I've reached a similar age as my parents at that time, I've come to think the same thing. We've got a nice colour screen, we can download games and we can buy games, but things weren't always this way. There was a certain magic at Christmas and birthday times, looking through the Argos catalogue for presents you hope to receive. I actually worked part-time in Argos in the late 90s whilst I was at college, and that magic I just talked about disappeared somewhat when you had to listen to Paul McCartney simply having a wonderful Christmas time about 80 times a day. But in the pages of the laminated Book of Dreams was all manner of bountiful things. There was the Nintendo NES, which was probably a little bit expensive for us in the UK. But with games costing upwards of £30 each, it wasn't going to happen with a lot of people's parents. Especially when with your home computer games would probably cost £1 or $2.99, there was no contest. But a lot of us might have received one of these LCD games. I remember one of the first ones I had came as a free gift with my Spectrum Plus 3 bundle. But we'll just take a quick look at a few of these that I owned over the years. This is probably the first one I remember playing. Just a simple racing game, move left, move right, avoid the cars. I think a bunch of us had these when we were younger. We used to swap them about so you never had the same one for very long. I do remember I ended up with this Top Gun LCD game along the way. Like I say, we did used to swap them about and this one was rubbish. Double Dragon 2 was a little bit better, but I haven't played this in probably around 30 years, so who knows how it holds up these days. One of my favourites of these was the Narc LCD game. I actually got this as a gift. I think I was doing really well in school at the time. I think my parents bought it for me. From Tesco Home and Wear. That was when Tesco used to have a separate shop for selling non-food stuff. I think I ended up swapping this at some point, which was a bit unfortunate as this was quite a good little game. I'm going to have to pick it up on eBay at some point. I did also have the Super Mario 3 watch. I do still own this. I think it's in a box in my garage somewhere. I don't think it's going to fit an adult wrist these days though, but I remember this being quite fun. One of the things I always wanted but never got was one of the Tomitronics 3D games. I think these were just a normal LCD game, but they had like a viewfinder on it and I think it gave it a cool 3D effect. One for the rich kids, I think. In 1989, the Nintendo Gameboy was finally released. Hopefully something that was going to consign those LCD games to the dustbin. I think I got one of these about a year or two after they came out. I think I got it as a birthday present. It wasn't a new one, but it was still quite a lot of money for a kid in those days. And my one came with Tetris, and I also picked out Turrican. I loved the game on the Amiga, so to be able to play it on holiday at the same time was great. And so today we're going to take a look at a few Game Boy games. There'll be no Game Boy Color here, there'll be no Game Boy Advance, nothing like that. Old school, black and white, or green and grey, however you want to say. So we're going to look at a few games that I remember, and I think we'll also go through my personal top 10 of this great little system. We'll take a look at golf first, and I think this is probably one of the first games I remember seeing on the Game Boy. It is a bit basic these days, but yeah, fine little golf game. It does make a hideous screeching sound when you hit the ball that I don't remember. Don't play this one with headphones. The Game Boy itself shipped with a link cable, so you could plug two Game Boys together with two games and play against each other. I seem to remember playing a game of golf with one of my friends with the link-up cable. Maybe this game hasn't aged too well, but yeah, it's golf. Next up, is it Kicks or is it Quicks? There always seems to be some argument floating around on how to pronounce this one. But it's a conversion of an early 80s arcade game of the same name, and basically you have to draw on the screen and box areas in. Once you've boxed a certain amount of area in, you move on to the next level. But you need to watch out for sparks and the Quicks itself, which will kill you if it touches you whilst drawing a line. Like the arcade, it's good, quick, simple fun, but there's not really much longevity in this game. You can't possibly do a Game Boy Classic video without including Tetris. I think this game was responsible for a large part of the Game Boy's success. I can even remember my parents playing this, and I'm sure lots of other people probably have the same story. As it was a packing game, it didn't actually come with the cardboard box like other games. So ironically, it's probably one of the cheapest Game Boy games to buy, yet if you want to buy the boxed version, it costs a whole lot more. Next is Alleyway. I think this was a launch title for the system. And you do actually get to play as Mario, kind of. It is a bit of a basic Breakout clone. It's not particularly exciting. I think the only sort of variation here is the scrolling playfields. One of my friends was a big fan of this back in the day, but this does nothing for me, I'm afraid. we have Super Mario Land. This was also available as a pack-in title. Now, I've never really been much of a fan of the Mario games. Mario 64, Sunshine, and the one on the Switch which I own that I can't remember the name of. Never really grabbed me, but this, yeah, great game. This probably was the first game I actually saw on the Game Boy, so yeah, definitely a bit of nostalgia in this one. This is Dragon's Lair. And do you ever find yourself liking a game that everyone else universally hates? I think I must be the only person who really likes this game and the Mega Drive version of Hard Driving. I don't know what it is about these two games, but I really like them. You can only do so much with 4 Shades of Grey on the Game Boy, but I think this probably has some of the best graphics on the system. I don't think there's any game on the system where the graphics are as good as this. Now, it's absolutely not without fault. There's lots of dodgy jumps in this game. You can fall through platforms, which is really annoying. And it can be quite frustrating, but finding the new areas, yeah, I really enjoyed this. There is perhaps another reason why I like this. It's actually pretty much a carbon copy of a Sinclair Spectrum game called Roller Coaster. And I remember really liking that game too. They have changed the graphics quite a lot. You'll see that the roller coasters are now minecarts, the waltzers are insects, and there's a whole other bunch of stuff that's different. But the actual layout of the game, the enemies and the items is pretty much the same, which is probably why I like this. There's a good version of R-Type on the Game Boy which is also worth checking out. I don't own this anymore, but I did own it back in the day, and yeah, it's a lot of fun. I believe it's got all the stages that the arcade has, and it also plays really well. I think the only problem it has is when there's too many sprites on screen, I think the enemy bullets sort of flicker and shimmer a bit, making them quite hard to see, so there are a few deaths that feel a bit cheap, but other than that though, it's a great game. One thing I do remember about this game is the odd cheat thing it had. It's called the D'Souza editor, and I'm not sure if it was something that was left in as part of game development to design sprites, but yeah, it's got this weird little kind of drawing program for sort of making your own bits and pieces. It doesn't do anything, you can't save anything, but yeah, it's something I remember from playing this back in the day. Burai Fighter Deluxe is another good shooter on the system. I still need to pick this one up. I think I own it on the NES somewhere, but I think the games pretty much play the same. It's one of those games where the game scrolls for you and you need to avoid all the obstacles, so you can get pulled through the level one way and then at the end you have to turn around and go a different route. But there's some cool boss fights in this game, so yeah, if you get a chance to pick it up, pick it up. This was the first Mega Man game for the system, and I remember finding this really difficult when I was younger. However, the aim of the game is to defeat the robot masters, and after you defeat them, you get to claim their weapons. And using their weapons against other enemies makes the game a whole lot easier, so it's really all about killing that first boss. Each of the bosses in this game tends to have a weakness against one of the weapons from the other bosses, so it's kind of all about figuring out their weakness. I really like this game, but I can understand why a lot of people don't. It's a lot of trial and error, this game. For example, you'll be falling and there'll be spikes below you that you can't really have seen or prepared for, so you've kind of got to die a few times to know where the hazards are to be able to avoid them. I can understand why a lot of people don't like that approach, but it does mean you get a little bit further each time as you know what's coming. But yeah, a great game and narrowly misses being in my top 10. The Game Boy does a good arcade conversion of Rodland. I don't know what it is about this game, but it seems to be going for quite good money on pretty much every system out there. It seems like a lot of people still want to play this. This is actually quite a good version of the game. It's nice and fast, it's got great music, it's got good graphics. Yeah, good game. This is Double Dragon 2, and I don't think it bears any resemblance to the arcade. It seems to be a completely separate version created for the Game Boy, and I remember this being much better than the original game. The original game always felt really slow to me, so yeah, this is a big improvement. I don't remember being quite this bad at this game back in the day. I think I actually managed to complete this game fairly easily. I think it's all about mastering the stomps and the uppercuts. But I think making it its own game to fit in with the Game Boy was probably a good move. This is Raging Fighter, and surprisingly quite a good Street Fighter clone. The Game Boy does have a release of Street Fighter 2 on it and Mortal Kombat 2, which are actually both quite good, but I think this is probably the best one-on-one fighter on the system. I got this for what would have been my 13th birthday. I remember getting it the day before, I took it upstairs and my parents told me you can open it the next day for your birthday. Well, they went to bed, the torch came out, the Game Boy came out, and I think I'd finished it by morning. Good memories of a great game. F1 Race was an early release on the system. One of my friends had this and I remember it came with the 4-player adapter. I think we only managed to ever play it with one other person. I think you could use the link-up cable for that. But yeah, a fun little racing game, fairly basic, but yeah, another good game for the system. Balloon Kid came out in 1990, and yeah, this was a great game as well. I think I swapped my original Turrican cartridge for this back in the day. I think eventually there was a bit of regret, but yeah, it was still a good game, so I can't complain. Okay, we've taken a look at several different games on the system, and now we'll look at what I would call my personal top 10 for the Game Boy. At number 10 is Super Mario Land 2. Now, like I said earlier, I'm not the greatest fan in the world of the Mario games, but number 2 on the Game Boy was really good. It improved on everything the original had to offer, and it was also not quite as linear. You could go to different zones, you didn't have to choose a specific order, you could just go sort of where you like. The graphics were improved a lot, and it had some really catchy tunes, so yep, this is a great game. At the number 9 spot is Ninja Gaiden. Thankfully nowhere near as difficult as the NES version. I remember finding this difficult back in the day as well, but playing it again I got quite far. I will have to pick this one up again. I don't own this anymore, but yeah, definitely one for the eBay auctions, I think. I think the deeper you get into this hobby, you're always reminded of other games, things that spark memories, and you think, oh yeah, I've got to add that one to the list as well, I'll pick it up someday. I think my text file of things to pick up just gets longer and longer, but that's the fun of collecting. The number 8 spot goes to Kirby's Dream Land. This is a really fun game to play through. I think if it's only got one problem, it's that it's a little bit too easy. Once you figure out the game bosses and the routes to take, you can pretty much finish it every time. However, it's still a good game, great music, and yeah, one I like to come back to quite often. At number 7 we have RC Pro-Am. This was made by Rare, and this is a really great racing game. I really like the way you can just clip the corners perfectly and drift around them, pick up power-ups, upgrade your car. This is excellent. I do have this on the NES as well, and yeah, it's just as fun there. Number 6 is Universal Soldier, and no, your eyes and ears do not deceive you, this is basically Turrican 2 for the Game Boy. Why is it called Universal Soldier? Basically because when they released it in North America, no one had really heard of the first Turrican game, so they figured if they buy the license to this film, they could put that on the cover, think it would be something people would recognise, and buy the game. You'll also find the Super Nintendo and Mega Drive versions of the game are also basically Turrican 2. Now I never owned or played this back in the day, I've only picked this up about 5 years ago, but thinking what a 13-year-old me would think about this. It's basically Turrican 2 on the handheld, and it's got some unique levels as well. I would think this would be absolutely brilliant if I could have played this back in the day. Number 5 is Mega Man 3, and I definitely got this for a birthday as well. This was an improvement on the first game. I think you had more weapons, you definitely had more levels. The game had some really catchy music as well. I've tried pretty much all the Mega Man games out on the Game Boy, but this is definitely my favourite. And yeah, definitely a lot of playing this by torchlight on a school night when I was younger. In the same style as the first game though, you defeat the Robot Masters and you use their weapons against other Robot Masters. One stage on this game I found really difficult was the Dive Man stage. If you've ever played this game you'll know exactly what I'm talking about, but it's underwater and there's spikes everywhere and one hit will kill you. But when you beat that one stage it's all worthwhile. It's amazing what you do remember from playing these games when you were younger. This game's now 29 years old and I can remember the final password for the password screen, no trouble whatsoever. I have since picked up the Mega Man collection on the Xbox 360, so at some point I will get round to finishing all the games. Number 4 on the list, and yet no surprise to see this on the list, I mentioned it earlier, it's Turrican. And yet this was the first game that I picked up for the system. It plays really well. It is missing a few levels that the Amiga version has. You don't get the 2 jetpack levels and the alien base level, but the levels it does have exactly the same as the Amiga, and it's just as playable as well. It does make a pretty valiant effort at actually trying to copy the music of the Amiga. Obviously it's going to come nowhere close to it, but it does a fine job at recreating the music with what it's got. DuckTales is at number 3. There's also a modern day remaster of this. I haven't got round to playing it, but that's supposed to be good also. It's got some catchy music in this game, not quite as good as the NES version, but you make do with what you've got. But yeah, another great game. Kind of feels a bit like Mega Man in the way you've got to get to the end of the levels to defeat the bosses, and to get keys to open other areas. I gave this another replay recently, didn't manage to finish it, but yeah, still a lot of fun. At number 2 is Metroid 2. Now I know this game doesn't look too much to look at, but the graphics don't make the game. And that's very true here. Really fun game, lots of hidden secrets to find. As you destroy more and more Metroids in the game, the lava level in the planet sinks, and so you can explore new areas. There's lots of interesting pickups, there's different weapons, different missiles, different abilities, so you're always looking around for hidden secrets to find. There is a modern day remake of this game, it's called AM2R, another Metroid 2 remake. And they've done a brilliant job with that game. It's a really good modern take on this game. They've got rid of all the sort of annoying buggy bits about this game, and they've just improved on it immensely. Like I say, it is free. Nintendo aren't too happy about it being out there, but if you know the places to look, you can pick it up and it's really worth playing. It's excellent. But going back to this original one, this was a lot of fun as well. Lots of time spent on this game, finding all the secrets, getting to the ending. And I think I finished it not long before Super Metroid came out on the Super Nintendo, so this was a great introduction. Well, we've looked at lots of different games, we're at the number 1 spot, so let's let the great man himself take this one.
Hi, Rick Mail here. I don't know if you're like me, immensely rich, talented, handsome. Isn't it a bore? Well, I found the answer. Zelda Link's Awakening from Nintendo. You play a medieval elf named Link.
You travel through many worlds, meeting endless characters on your eternal adventures.
So hey, next time you're Rick Mail, why not try Zelda Link's Awakening? I think you'll like it. Ciao.
What a classic this game is, easily my favourite on the system. Some people might be wondering why this is at number 1. There's other Zelda games, there's Oracle of Seasons and Oracle of Ages, not to mention about 10 different Pokemon games. I never got round to playing the other 2 Zelda games, I will one day, but not something I played when I was growing up, and the Pokemon craze kind of passed me by, so this game is where it's at for me. I played through this on a 2-week holiday. I was a bit too young to stay at home at that point. I think my brother got the luxury of staying at home in the house for the first time, but I ended up having to go on holiday. But to keep me entertained, I took the Game Boy and this game and a few others. And pretty much every time we weren't on the beach, I was sat in the flat playing this, and I played this pretty much solidly for the 2 weeks, and I ended up finishing it. There was no internet back then, so all the strategies of defeating enemies, you had to work it all out for yourself. There's no one you could ask, there was no hint book. But I think I found all the secret seashells you need to power up your weapon in this game. It is a game I have played again since, and yet it still holds up perfectly well. This is probably my favourite Zelda game, even more than Breath of the Wild. For me there's just so much nostalgia attached to this game. So yeah, I will have to get round to playing Ages and Seasons at some point, and hopefully they're as good as this. There was a nice surprise in 2019, a full remaster of the game on the Nintendo Switch. I think I pretty much pre-ordered this game as soon as it was possible. It finally arrived and I think I finished it within a week. It is pretty much a remaster, a one-to-one recreation of the original game, the original dialogue, the original zones. I think it had a few little extras but nothing really significant. We got some remasters of the original tunes as well, and it was a great game and a nice surprise. But for me, the original still holds the top spot, and all the nostalgia that goes along with it. I think the original Game Boy Classic does get a little bit overlooked these days. I think mainly it's down to the graphics. Yeah, they're 4 shades of grey, but it really doesn't matter. As long as it's got the gameplay, that's all that matters. And the original Game Boy has got some great games, so seek them out, have fun, spend some money and find some hidden gems. I did eventually upgrade my original Game Boy to the Game Boy Pocket, which you're seeing here. It was a little bit smaller, took fewer batteries, but the screen was great. It had a really crisp, clear screen, and I never really had a problem with the original Game Boy. Seeing the graphics, they were always pretty clear, but yeah, this upgrade gave a nice sharp screen. Well, let me know in the comments what games you played growing up. Maybe you remember some of the games on the list here, or maybe you've got some recommendations. But that's going to do us for now. Until next time, thanks for watching.